Hello, and welcome back. I have been away for a while. Thank you so much to those of you who are being patient and have waited for the next video. Thank you. I know maybe only 5 of you are going to see this, and you know what? 5 is plenty of people because I love having discussions with you. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm currently out in Dallas, shaking hands, making money, working on set, doing what I love. And the goal is to save up enough money out here to eventually make my own feature film. And so I will keep you posted on that. Don't want to say too much more, otherwise I will shoot myself in the foot and set expectations that I can't reasonably meet. So without further ado, let's talk about the trajectory of this channel. I think I've finally kind of planted a little bit of roots here to feel comfortable with uploading again. So hopefully I'll be doing that again. Hopefully I'll also even start streaming on Twitch because I like playing video games. I can stream on Twitch and then put those videos onto this channel as well. I want to do short form reviews for 4 movies. So today we're going to start with Spider-Man Brand New Day. And then over the next couple of days, over the next couple of weeks, hopefully you'll be seeing short form reviews of The Odyssey, Project Hail Mary, and Avatar Fire and Ash in that order. I'm going to go in reverse, and then I want to start working on long form reviews for those 4 movies as well. So probably we'll start with Avatar Fire and Ash, a long form review, and then we'll go into Project Hail Mary. The DVD just did come out, so I'm planning to buy that so then I can use that footage for myself. And then we will move to The Odyssey when it comes out on disc, and finally Spider-Man Brand New Day, and then any movies that come out later. The long form just makes sense to wait for the disc so that, even if YouTube strikes me down, it is, the movie that I own on disc, on digital Blu-ray, digital code, whatever. You can expect to see those long form reviews on Patreon. I think I just won't even bother with YouTube. So without further ado, let's get into Spider-Man Brand New Day, my short form review. So to start off, I have never really been a fan of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Table that for a second. And therefore, I never felt any sort of compelling reason to voice my opinions on Tom Holland's Spider-Man, because if I don't like him, why am I going to come out and bash on a kid who, really the mantle of Spider-Man and the direction that it's been taken has not really been his fault. So why am I going to fault this actor for something that's not his fault? The same way that I've come to view Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I'm not going to fault him for the poor performance of his movies. I'm going to fault the writers. They didn't do a good job. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is not that great of a movie, even though they have one of the best Spider-Man actors ever to fill the role. So I understand that there's a lot of conjecture when it comes to the conversation surrounding Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero and has been my favorite superhero since I was 6 years old. So this character is near and dear to me. I grew up on Tobey. I remember when Andrew's movie started coming out, 2012, I was in middle school. I went opening weekend to see The Amazing Spider-Man. I went opening weekend to see The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I have also been to every single Spider-Man movie thus far, including the Miles Morales Across the Spider-Verse and all of Tom's movies I have seen in the theaters. So I'm as much of a Spider-Man fan as the next guy. And then there's more on top of that, okay? So let's list out some of my credentials. I've been reading the comics since I was 6 years old, thanks to my Uncle Mike. I've watched the 90s cartoon. I've seen bits and pieces here and there of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon and Spider-Man Unlimited. And then I've even seen some of the kids shows, Spidey and his friends. Read plenty of comics from the OG, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko era, all the way to the 90s, where they kind of had the rugged, jagged, pointed versions of him, to, even modern day, where he was an adult, he had his own company, and then lost it. The whole transition from Doc Ock taking over his body to him coming back into his own body. I've been with it all, okay? So I'm not trying to come at this from a sort of quote-unquote normie perspective, a normie view. I really have deep respect for this character. He is my favorite superhero character. And with that being said, I have some pretty strong opinions on Tom's Spider-Man. So let's start with where I was before seeing Brand New Day. So where I was before Brand New Day with let's lay out all 6 of Tom Holland's Spider-Man appearances, okay? Number 1, Captain America Civil War 2016, right? He just pops in, he's like, hey, everybody freaks out. He's got the Captain America shield. He's being a goofy kid. I've got homework. Okay, this feels like a kid that is barely Spider-Man, and that's established. He's only been Spider-Man for maybe 3 to 6 months. Great, cool. And then they went a really great direction that I personally liked. We didn't need to rehash the Uncle Ben story. And so he's already had great power and great responsibility. He's already had that conversation. He already has his guiding light and his, North Compass, his Rosetta Stone? No, that's not what it is. He already has his guiding light, his North Star, for the reasons that he is Spider-Man. And it was just really cool to see him appear in Civil War. He's a small part, but it's enough to make me happy. Spider-Man's in the MCU, finally. This is what we've been wanting. Next, we get to Spider-Man Homecoming, so it is post-Civil War. He comes home, we get to see, like, a modern Spider-Man. He's doing, like, a little vlog, and he's like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Went, and he's doing, like, a little Twitch, whatever, and it's fun. It's like, okay, yeah, this makes sense for what a modern-day Spider-Man would be. We get to see him be a friendly neighbor, he's swinging around the city, stopping bike thieves, petty crimes, and then he runs into a couple people with some super-powered, gizmos and gadgets. It's a lot of fun. The biggest detriment to this movie is Tony Stark, unfortunately. And before I hear all you Tony Stark glazers out there, let me tell you why. Tony Stark comes in as a sort of mentor figure to Peter, whereas in Civil War, he came at him with, hey, dude, I need another member of my team just to help me out. And then, I'll let you go and do your thing. It's a one-time meet. It's a one-time thing. And yet Homecoming takes it to the point where now Tony is kind of a mentor figure, a father figure to him. And let's go into the nerdy reason of why I dislike that. The nerdy reason is because when you read the comics, quite frequently, Peter and Tony do not have a good relationship. They actually don't like each other. They're both incredibly intelligent, and yet they despise each other. Peter despises Tony mainly because he's arrogant. He's kind of a jackass. That's Tony's whole character. So coming into the movie, now Peter looks up to him as a father figure. I understand what it's doing for Tony's character. I get what they were wanting to do with Tom's Spider-Man, but the reason that didn't feel right to me was what I'm going to call the Uncle Ben problem. The Uncle Ben problem plagued Tom's trilogy, and here's what it is. Civil War says he already had his great power, great responsibility. Uncle Ben is not around. Aunt May is alone. So we are kind of left to assume the origin story has already happened. He already got bitten. He already went through his metamorphosis and his transformation. He already had the conversation with Uncle Ben. He already has great power, great responsibility, and he already has the guilt of Uncle Ben's death on his conscience. We don't need to see it rehashed, but it's there, and we can move forward with it. And then enter Homecoming, and all of a sudden he has a new father figure, and it makes sense. It makes sense why he would want that, but it felt like it was detracting from the Spider-Man movie, because who's the villain? Vulture. Why is Vulture the bad guy? Why is Vulture mad or whatever? It's not because of Spider-Man. Vulture is Spider-Man's villain, and instead in this movie, he's mad at Tony. And so Spider-Man is just the little annoying kid getting in the way, where you have the Titan Vulture and the Titan Iron Man over here. Peter's just in the middle here, like, me, me, me. It's not a Spider-Man movie if the Spider-Man villain isn't motivated to get Spider-Man. He's motivated to get Tony, okay? Whatever. So that's, it's supposed to be a Spider-Man movie, and yet it's actually more anchored to Tony. And then we get to Infinity War and Endgame. Fine, okay? Again, these are kind of Civil War appearances where he makes a small cameo. He's not really that big of a character. But then Endgame comes along and Tony dies, which was beautiful, okay? That's like a beautiful close to his arc. It makes sense. it's perfect. We leave him alone. He's dead until Doomsday, which is coming out this December. We'll talk about that later. But it's beautiful, right? And then Peter comes over and is like, absolutely devastated. His father figure is gone. And I don't know, man. Personally, for Infinity War and Endgame, I didn't feel the heartstrings pull because I still didn't like that these characters were in a mentor-mentee relationship. So Peter doesn't really even know Tony like that. And yeah, he kind of gives him a hard lesson in Homecoming. He's like, if you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it. They were kind of writing Peter's character to be a baby Iron Man. And that's not who Spider-Man is. So that was frustrating, that through these 4 appearances, now what you're doing is making Spider-Man a microcosm of an Iron Man, because you know that Iron Man is the heart and soul of the MCU, and instead of like letting Spider-Man be his own person, you want to put him into the spot of Tony to hold the entire MCU together, when Spider-Man holds the Marvel Comics brand together because he's Spider-Man, not because he's baby Iron Man. And so I didn't like the direction that they were going with that. And then they continued it into Far From Home. And Far From Home is already a character assassination of Spider-Man as it is. Homecoming did a good job because, hey, he's making the hard choice to go after Vulture even though he doesn't need to. He's making the hard choice to go after Vulture, which affects his relationship with Liz, the girl. He sacrifices his relationship with the girl. That's 100% Spider-Man's character. And then, he's making do with the little technology that he has. That final fight with Vulture was peak because that is the indomitable spirit of who Spider-Man is, of who Peter Parker is. And then it just feels like they kind of reverse on it. They took 2 steps back to go into Far From Home, where he's like, I don't even want to be Spider-Man, man. Like, I just want to take the summer off. I just, whatever. It's like, I get it. He's a kid, so it makes sense for the character of a kid, but it doesn't make sense for the character of Spider-Man. You know what I'm saying? And then, again, we have the problem of his villain, Mysterio, is not even his villain. It's Tony's villain. He's fixated on Tony. And so we still have looming over this Spider-Man movie a Tony Stark presence. And it feels like the writers were so desperate to remind you that, hey, he's still in the MCU, guys. Like, this is our MCU Spider-Man. Why do I need to be reminded of that? We know he's in the MCU. Let him be on his own. You know how, like, Captain America, Winter Soldier, let him be his own thing, even though we already know he's in the MCU, but it's still a Captain America movie? It wasn't an Iron Man movie. Why do we have to do that with Spider-Man? It's a Spider-Man movie, yet it feels more like an Iron Man movie. And he's just the little pipsqueak getting in the way of the Iron Man villain. So annoying. Anyway, moving on. I think that's a complete character assassination because, okay, and then we have Nick Fury there. We need to add these MCU anchor points to remind you that he's in the MCU. Stop it. It's too much. Okay, anyway. And then we get to No Way Home, which is probably the most egregious of his trilogy, because it's as if the writers recognized, oh no, our Spider-Man is not his own Spider-Man. He's been grounded and linked to Tony the last 5 appearances that he's had in the MCU. People aren't happy with it. Okay, how do we get him to be Spider-Man? How do we get to do it? Oh, we Uncle Ben him. Enter what I said earlier, the Uncle Ben problem. The Uncle Ben problem is that we thought he was already pre-established as being dead. We thought that Peter already had his guiding star, his North Star, his guiding, internal compass of why he's Spider-Man, and that should be Uncle Ben. They tried to take it back 2 steps and kill Iron Man, and that's his Uncle Ben moment. And then when everybody's expressing frustration about, well, why is Tony the Uncle Ben? Okay, well, we can't do Uncle Ben because he hasn't been in the movies at all, so we kill Aunt May. And then that's finally what's going to be getting him to be Spider-Man. Like, he should have been already what we thought we were looking at in Homecoming, and that was undone in Far From Home. What the hell, guys? So they kill Aunt May to get us the Uncle Ben. With great power, there must also come great responsibility, and then completely deprive him of everything, all of his friends and everything that's made him unique. We need to, reduce him down to Toby, being on his own and Andrew being on his own. And going off of Toby and Andrew, again, all the villains in his own solo movies have been Tony villains, and now the villains that make him his own Spider-Man are not even his own. They are Toby's. They are Andrew's, and they come in and they wreak havoc on his life, but again, he's just a little pipsqueak in the middle. He's the little pipsqueak Spider-Man, where all these villains have pre-established notions of who Spider-Man is, and they're after him simply because he's Spider-Man, not because he's actually made them his own enemies. So that's frustrating in its own right as well. So that concludes the trilogy. That concludes all 6 of his appearances, and it was absolutely abysmal. We finally get him to the point where he does his solo swing at the end of No Way Home. He's got a great looking suit. He's on his own. He's in an apartment and he has no friends, no family, nothing. But why did it take us 6 movies? Why did it take writers being not confident of who they were writing to get him here? The 6 MCU appearances of Spider-Man to date, pre-Brand New Day, have been unsure, unconfident, backstepping, and reworking to try and make their own Spider-Man, and yet they have stepped on their own toes, retracted their original concept, retreaded old ground. It's just a mess, and I didn't like it. All right, now that we've established the problems that I had with Spider-Man pre-Brand New Day, let's get into Brand New Day. Brand New Day is a masterclass in how not to circumvent all of the things that came before that weren't necessarily always well received. So a good example of this is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. J.J. Abrams effectively retconned, destroyed, bashed, ignored, whatever you want to call it, everything good that came from The Last Jedi. Regardless of your opinions of The Last Jedi, if you hate it or you like it, there are good things regarding the movie and there are poor things regarding the movie. JJ completely reduced the whole movie to not having existed. So essentially we jump from The Force Awakens to The Rise of Skywalker. And that's not good. There were good things that could have been used to be brought over, that could have been, reworked in a little bit of a better way. And instead, JJ just decided to ignore it. That's not good. Destin Daniel Cretton, the director of this movie, does the phenomenal job of taking everything that this Spider-Man is, from his trilogy and his 3 corporate MCU appearances, and homogenizing it together to establish the baseline of who Spider-Man is at the start of this movie. It gives you, the first act, the first 30 minutes are a breath of fresh air. This Spider-Man has established himself over the last 4 years as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He is the go-to guy for the police. He works well with them. He has his established routine. He is integrated into the world of the MCU independently while also connected. This is everything that he should have been, everything we thought he was in Homecoming, and yet now it is firmly established without any sort of heavy MCU anchor. We don't have a Tony Stark. We don't have a Nick Fury anchoring him to the MCU to tell you, to really mistreat you as an audience member, to be like, hey, knock knock, we think you're stupid, you need to remember that he's part of the MCU. Instead, he is his own living, breathing entity and character outside of the rest of the MCU world. Yes, we have cameos, right? We have the Punisher, we have Hulk, we have Sadie Sink's character, which, if you haven't seen it, go ahead and see it, but everybody pretty much knows who it is. But just for the sake of spoiler free. Then we also have a surprise cameo in there, which I'm sure if you've been on social media, you've probably gotten spoiled. If you haven't gotten spoiled, I won't spoil it for you. You're safe with me. Essentially, there's a lot of cameos in this movie. There's a lot of people that Spider-Man interacts with to help him in his journey, in his adventure for this movie. And yet none of them takes away from the fact that this is a Spider-Man story. This is a Spider-Man movie. It's him. He's the one who is in the way of the Hand. It's him that's in the way of Scorpion. It's him that's in the way of all the villains that we see. And quite frankly, It's a breath of fresh air. The other thing that Spider-Man Brand New Day gets right about the character of Spider-Man is the hard choices that he has to make. He kind of completely envelops himself in the work of being Spider-Man. Unfortunately, we don't really have a way to know how is he making money. How is he, sustaining himself? How is he eating? We don't really get to see that side of him. Is he selling photos to the Bugle? Is he a social media influencer? Is he picking up odd jobs around? Are the police paying him under the table? Like, we don't know, right? So that's one thing that, like, if you think about it too hard, then it can kind of like break down a little bit. But the great thing is that you kind of don't want to think about that stuff. This is Spider-Man. He's on his own. He doesn't really have friends. He's keeping track of MJ and Ned, while still in New York while they're off and doing their own thing. And it really helps to ground the movie and the character in his emotional center. Everything that came before in his trilogy, No Way Home, MJ and Ned forget him, everybody else forgets him. It all comes crashing down on him and leaves him feeling very alone. And that's kind of the crux of where we want Spider-Man to grow from. And it's quite relatable nowadays because we are in such a digital era where we are more connected than ever, and yet we are lonelier than any generation before. And Spider-Man's plight in general of just being a lonely kid who isolates himself for the fact that he's a superhero and he doesn't want anybody else to get hurt because of his endeavors really resonates with us more, now than ever than in previous iterations like Toby's or Andrew's. And I think that's what the filmmakers really get right here. And, you hear a lot about how Tom Holland had a heavy hand in the script and that they really wanted to do the character justice. I think they did do this character justice. Again, I gave all of my credentials as being a fan of Spider-Man. There are certain tropes and certain elements and factors that make a Spider-Man story, and this movie hit all of them. Solo, he's lonely, isolating himself, he's caught between, is he Peter, is he Spider-Man? And the beautiful thing, that this isn't a spoiler, he gets asked that question in the movie, and you can see him fighting between, is he Spider-Man? Is he Peter Parker? This is very antithetical to a character like Batman. If somebody were to ask Batman, are you Batman or are you Bruce Wayne? He'd say, I'm Batman. Like, he completely envelops himself in that character. In his mind, he considers himself Batman. Bruce Wayne doesn't exist. But for Spider-Man, Spider-Man's entire story is that he's both. He's Peter and Spider-Man, and that is what makes it beautiful, is that he has to balance, he has to toe the line, and it feels so realistic to us because we're trying to balance the line between career and relationships. We're trying to balance the line between family and friends. We're trying to balance the line between school and extracurriculars, my personal life and my social life. We're all trying to make things work and to balance all of the different plates that life throws at us, and it's constantly a juggling act. And where Spider-Man grows in this story is that he goes from completely being enveloped in Spider-Man to learning how to juggle the plates and coming into his own and realizing, you know what? No, I am both. I am Peter Parker and I am Spider-Man. And we firmly establish that baseline to where the next movie, hopefully it's the next 2 movies, right? Hopefully we have another trilogy. I would like this trilogy to expand upon that dynamic. How does he balance Peter with Spider-Man? How does he balance social life with superhero life? How does he balance school if he decides to go back to school with superheroing? That is the heart of the character of Spider-Man, and we finally have reached that heart. It is still unfortunate that it took 6 movies to get there, but we're here, and I'm very grateful for that. So now at this point, when you're asked, who is your favorite Spider-Man? In my mind now, it's simply a matter of conjecture. Who do you like? Who's your favorite? Because each Spider-Man is independent. Each Spider-Man is unique. Each Spider-Man has their own strengths and their own weaknesses. Each Spider-Man has their own quirks and their own stories and their own backgrounds and their own villains. Like, each Spider-Man is uniquely individual, and I could genuinely not want anything more for the Spider-Man fandom, for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and for every person out there, for every kid out there who is looking to look up to a superhero for guidance, for wisdom, for inspiration, for heroism. Spider-Man is kind of the pinnacle of what that is, and it makes me so happy that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is finally on par with Tobey and with Andrew. At this point, it doesn't matter who your favorite Spider-Man is, because they're all great. They're all awesome. You know, if you weren't happy with Tobey and how his trilogy ended, No Way Home gave him an opportunity to be redeemed. If you didn't like how Andrew's duology ended, you had No Way Home to kind of act as a closing chapter to him to, send him on his way. And if you didn't like where Tom Holland was at the end of No Way Home, or you liked that we finally got to that point but wanted to see more, Brand New Day is that movie for you. It's that movie for me, where now Tobey, Andrew, and Tom are all at the same level where whoever is your favorite Spider-Man, doesn't matter, man. Take your pick. They're all great. They're all awesome. And I want to see more of this. I want to see more of this Spider-Man. Genuinely, before the movie came out, I was at a point where if Brand New Day doesn't get Spider-Man right, I'm done with Tom. And I am so happy that they got it right. That they have finally pulled the trigger on being confident in who this Spider-Man is, giving freedom and power and strength to Tom Holland as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And as the actor in the middle of it, he talks about, I had a hand in the script, I had a hand in the story. You can see it and you can feel it. There's a lot of heart, there's a lot of care, and there's a lot of love that went into this iteration of the hero, into this movie. And I think without that heart, you miss out on who Spider-Man is. So I'm going to wrap it up there. That's my short form review. I absolutely loved this movie. I'll even put my Letterboxd ranking down in the description. At this point, there's kind of like 3 movies. It's between Brand New Day, the first Spider-Man, and I think Into the Spider-Verse that are all kind of like vying for their own spot. Like, you'll see it in the section, and I'll link it down below. But this is definitely one of the best Spider-Man movies that we've gotten in a long time. It is Tom Holland's best Spider-Man feature by far, by miles. And again, it just brings him to the same level as Tobey, as Andrew, and let's even put Miles up there with the Spider-Verse movies. All 4 of these Spider-Men are goated in their own right. And so take your pick, okay? And if anybody comes to me and says, yo, Tom Holland is my favorite Spider-Man, I'm not going to fight him anymore. Brand New Day did the work that it needed to. Great. That's awesome for you. If you tell me it's Tobey, dude, I'm right there with you. I'm an OG. If you say it's Andrew, I'm right there with you. I loved seeing his new movies coming out when I was in middle school. If you say Tom now, I'm with you, man. I'm all for you. If you say Miles, with you. I'm all for you. So keep an eye out in the coming months. Whenever the disc comes out, I will perform my long form review. I'll do the work and put that on Patreon. We're not even going to worry about YouTube because YouTube just doesn't like me. But also keep an eye out for the other short form reviews that are going to be coming out soon. Like I said, I want to do the Odyssey next. That's the movie that I saw most recently before Brand New Day. And then I want to do Project Hail Mary and Avatar Fire and Ash. I feel like those are 3 reviews that I owe you, and then we'll get started on the long form. So stay tuned, stay frosty. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will catch you next time. Peace.